Now, I want you all to take a look at what you see on this screen. And the reason I put this up here is because we're going to talk a lot today about facts and fake information. There's a lot of talk and a lot of things that people have put on the internet, Instagram, and things like that, talking about what they can and cannot do for people and that kind of stuff. You got to understand that we're going to be talking today from a perspective of how the law and the system is set up, and then also how this process is still unfinished and we can help shape the process. So that's why I have the fake versus facts, because there's a lot of factual information that is being ignored here in Virginia, and it's impactful on your pocket long term. Now, the image on the right side, a lot of people see that, and some people don't necessarily understand what that means. Some people do. Some people read into it more than it's actually saying. It's from a cartoon strip. The author's name is on there, so I want to make sure he gets credit for what he's done. But that right there represents a lot of the cannabis industry in other parts of the country that are well established. And what we're talking about here is, in many communities over the last 40 plus years, the war on drugs has decimated communities of color. And, they've been over-policed, underfunded. There's a multitude of problems there. So we always talk about equity from the perspective of, inclusion in the economics, because expungement and all those things are a given in our mind. Fixing people's records for stuff that people are now making a lot of money for in different parts of the country and very soon here in the state. We believe that this cartoon depicts a lot of the problem of what we're going to what we anticipate running into more of in Virginia. I say this because in other states that I've studied and researched and traveled to, equity was used as a door opener. It became a marketing term that people just use to describe getting in at the front end of cannabis. And in several of those markets today, the people that currently hold those licenses don't look like me and don't have any melanin in their skin because of that privilege. And we want to educate and empower people in our state as to understanding how some people's businesses have been basically uprooted and basically pulled from under them, some of them voluntarily and some of them unknowingly. So you'll hear some stories about that and some things, because as I said, this is about empowerment and gaining knowledge. And next slide, please. Okay, now I want you all to look at this, and then we're going to dive into this. I put this up here because this right here, even outside of cannabis, this right here is exactly why everybody in the Black and brown community across the state of Virginia should be paying close attention to this industry. Not necessarily because they want to get rich, not necessarily because they want to get high, not because they want to become a legal drug dealer and all the other nonsense that people have said. It is because when it comes to economics, Black people have been economically excluded from every industry in the United States. And now we have an industry that has been used against us, that being cannabis as a plant. And if you go back and look at political ads in print, video, and radio over the last 40 years, in those ads, when they talk about crime, they talk about drugs, they talk about the ills of society, it's images and depictions of Black and brown people that have been used to sell the war on drugs. That war on drugs made a lot of people money, made a lot of police departments money. A lot of police departments got a ton of funding. Federal agencies got a ton of funding, but the war on drugs was lost because it didn't really accomplish anything that close. And all it did is hurt millions and millions and millions of people and have left a huge void in our society. But this right here, if you're looking at this, the average African-American family has only $3,600 in assets. The Hispanic community, Latino families have double that. And you look at the white family. Now, some of you are thinking, oh, that's because white people have everything, blah, blah, blah. Not the case. what I'm talking about here, and you're going to hear me talk a lot about economics. Okay. You're going to hear me talk about the economic engine of cannabis. And the reason that is the case, where you see the gaping difference in assets and wealth accumulation in these three groups of people, is because in the white community, those folks have had generational assets. And typically what happens when someone owns land, a business, a house, or multiple houses, they end up passing away. They typically pass away with a will because they know they have assets, and they leave those assets to their children. Those generate and grow generation after generation, and people amass wealth and financial independence, and they never even had anything to do with it. Why is that possible in that community? Simply because they have been able to participate in the economy of ownership in business. And that's what this is about in cannabis. But for Black people, it's ownership is just the start. Employment is a key part. Management, supervisory roles, all of those things should be very much at the front of the mind for our community. Next slide.